And hi, Maren. Welcome, everyone, to today's session of the CIEE virtual fair, focusing on our Global Navigator high school program in Amsterdam. In fact, two of them. Thank you so much for taking the time to join this session. As Pierre already previewed, the goal really is for you to be able to ask any questions that you have about either of our programs, but I'll begin by sharing sort of a broad overview of what these programs will entail, where they'll be taking place, and what you can expect if you do decide to join us in the spring. When I was putting together this presentation, I absolutely had to use this picture as the picture that I would put on the first slide. You see here a group of high school students. These are students who participated in our Queer Life and Activism program. This was the year 2019, and that was the last time that we ran that program. And you see this group of students here linked, right? All of their arms are linked. This is not how they arrived, but this is how they left. And this is what happens during these high school programs. You'll make friends that will probably last you a lifetime, and you'll forge really deep connections with each other while you're studying abroad here in Amsterdam. It's also a great picture, of course, because it's the postcard of Amsterdam that you're probably familiar with. What you see here is our famous 17th century canal belt, or what you see is one of those canals, and then those beautiful 17th century canal houses, all with their little individual architectural flourishes here on this first slide. And I just absolutely love this picture because it shows what the high school program has the potential to do. So what are we going to be covering today? I'll share a little bit of information about the city of Amsterdam for those of you who may not be familiar with the city or have some questions about the city. I'll give you a quick overview of both of the programs that we will be offering in Amsterdam this coming summer. That is our Queer Life and Activism program, as well as our World Government program. And then I really just want to open it up for questions. This will give you a chance to get to know each other a little bit, hear from other persons on the call, and hopefully by the end of this presentation, you will walk away with a more informed sense of what this program will entail. I throughout used pictures from our 2019 high school programs, just to give you a sense of what a day in the life of your experience might be if you do decide to join us here in Amsterdam. This is again a picture of one of our groups of high school students in 2019 in the historic city center of Amsterdam. And you see the crest, the shield of Amsterdam in the background with the iconic 3 X's. Where are we located and who am I? Let's begin there. My name is Jonathan Key, and I am the Center Director of the CIEE Amsterdam Center, which means that I oversee all of the programs that we offer here in Amsterdam. And I am very proud to say that I was very intimately involved in the creation of these high school programs, specifically the Queer Life and Activism program, which is near and dear to my heart. I'm originally from Belgium, and you see Belgium here on the map as well. That is our immediate neighbor to the south, but I have been living in the Netherlands for over 12 years. The city of Amsterdam is circled right there in red. That is one of our 2 capitals. The Netherlands is sort of a unique country in that sense, in that we have a cultural capital as well as a political capital. And that political capital will come into play when we talk about the World Government program. Amsterdam is the cultural capital. It is in many ways the heart of the country. The Hague is our political capital, and that is also our seat of government. I'm coming to you from the city of Amsterdam, again, circled right there on the map. What are some of the reasons why you may have decided to choose the Netherlands as the country that you want to study abroad in? There's a number of them that I've listed here on this slide, and we'll begin with the bottom one because I find that in my experience, this is one that often motivates students when they choose to decide to study here. If you know anything about the Netherlands, if you've ever heard the word Dutch or the word Holland, or if you've ever heard of the city of Amsterdam, you may have thought about a progressive city, a city that is known for progressive social policies, a city in a country that is known for its forward-thinking approach to solving tricky social policy issues and for developing social and political policies. And that is in many ways baked into Dutch identity and is sort of a building block of the Dutch and our approach and our global reputation. You may know, for example, that the Netherlands was the first country in the world to legalize same-sex marriage, and we did that in 2001. And that's one example, and one example that we'll discuss in great detail if you decide to join the Queer Life and Activism program. The Netherlands is also one of the founding members of the European Union. So together with Belgium and Luxembourg, we formed the very first version of the European Union, which was then known as the Benelux, Belgium, the Netherlands, Luxembourg. That was sort of the baby version of the European Union that we have now. So as a founding member of that very first coalition of European countries, we've always had a seat at the table when it comes to thinking about the future of Europe and the future about a European approach to coalitional government. And then you may know, perhaps, although it's usually a little bit less known, that the Netherlands is home to a number of key European institutions. Arguably the most famous one, and the one that you may have heard of, is the International Criminal Court of Justice, or the ICJ. And the ICJ is one of the 6 principal organs of the United Nations, and it is that part of the United Nations that solves or attempts to solve conflicts in international law between countries. So if there are issues between countries that focus on international law, where one country, to put it simply, is suing another country, if that happens, then they do that at the International Criminal Court of Justice. And that organization is situated in The Hague. So that is that political capital that I was talking about. Another organization, which for the past year and a half has played a crucial role in all of our lives as Europeans, is the EMA. And the EMA is the European Medicines Agency, and that is our version of the FDA. And I think you may understand why that organization has played such a key role. That is the organization responsible for approving COVID vaccines. So the EMA, which is located right here in the city of Amsterdam, is responsible for ensuring that these vaccines are safe for use, and it has therefore played a key role in our ability to combat the pandemic in the past year and a half. So those are just 2 examples of institutions that have an outsized influence on what happens in Europe and frankly, what happens in the world. One of them located in Amsterdam, one of them located in The Hague. Almost everyone here speaks English. I know that some of you may be thinking, I'm perhaps a little bit worried. How will I be getting around? I don't speak the language. Dutch is not a language that I've ever even heard of. How will I be able to make my way safely through the city of Amsterdam? Well, you're in luck in that in the Dutch and the Netherlands are known for their English language proficiency. Almost everyone here speaks English. And I would say that everyone you will meet in Amsterdam is more than proficient in English. We believe in happiness. We believe that happiness is a result of good, sensible social policy. And we'll talk about that in both of the programs, both the World Government Program and the Queer Life and Activism program. Our food culture is really mixed. We know that many of you will want to try all of the foods on offer here in the Netherlands, and we have a little something for everyone right here. Amsterdam, although it is a global city and it is very much the capital of the country, is comparatively small, which gives it a really cozy feel. So even though it's a global capital, it's actually, when it comes right down to it, a really small, compact, easy to navigate city. What are some of the things that you might be doing here in Amsterdam? Well, here you see a group of students, also including me, in front of the Amsterdam Royal Palace. So this is one of the 6 royal palaces that the Dutch royal family has. It's good to be a royal and to have 6 palaces to choose from. But this is arguably the most famous palace, and it's situated right in the center of the city of Amsterdam. As I told you, it's a fairly compact city, which makes it really easy to navigate. It's a city with a lot of green space. We're a big believer in having a lot of green space, so there are parks everywhere. And regardless of the program you're joining, we will be spending as much time outside in the park with you as possible. Of course, the Netherlands is also really famous as a biking country. So when you visualize the Netherlands, you may be visualizing a person on a bike with a baby in one hand and a loaf of bread in the other hand, and somehow still able to safely bike through the city. And we will, of course, make sure that we give you some bike tutorials and that we go with you on a number of biking tours through the city. We have many museums in the city of Amsterdam. Many of them celebrate or commemorate that Dutch golden age, which was in the 17th century. And that was when the Netherlands was at the top of the world. It was the king of the world. It dominated art, trade, politics. And a lot of that you can still find in our most famous museums, all of which are located right here in Amsterdam. You may have heard of Van Gogh. You may have heard of Rembrandt. Well, they all have museums dedicated to them right here. And I do know that many of you have heard of Anne Frank. And I would guess that many of you have read the diary of Anne Frank, the diary that she kept during the occupation of Amsterdam in the Second World War by the Nazi regime. And as you know, Anne Frank was in hiding during that time. And that house that she grew up in and that she hid in is now a museum. And we will be taking you to the Anne Frank Museum on a tour of that museum to learn more about the role that the Holocaust played and how it affected the city of Amsterdam and its Jewish population. I've mentioned this a couple of times already. We have 2 programs that we are offering here in Amsterdam. The first is our Queer Life and Activism program, and the second is our World Government program. And here, again, you see our students biking, safety first, so everyone's wearing a helmet. And we will be using the bike as much as possible. And we will always be biking with you when we go on those bike tours. So we have these 2 programs. They have different themes, they have different classes, but they share a lot in common in terms of our approach to them. A typical week will include about 15 hours of classes that you will take with us with CIE, and those classes are really interactive. So you're not just there to sit back and to take it all in. Everything is discussion-based. Everything will be a conversation between you and between the teacher. We also make sure that we jam-pack your schedule with guest lectures and site visits to local organizations. We want to take you outside the classroom as much as possible so that you have a sense of how queer policy or policies in world politics actually are carried out. What are the organizations that are actually tasked with putting the theory into practice? So we always want to link what happens in the classroom to what happens in the real world. In addition to that, we will be organizing a number of cultural activities and excursions throughout the program. After you have class, whether that's in the mornings or in the afternoons, and for all of you that will probably alternate, you'll have some morning classes, some afternoon classes, we will be scheduling cultural activities and excursions so that you have a broad perspective on the city of Amsterdam by the time that you leave the program. We'll also make sure, of course, that you have enough free time to explore the city of Amsterdam on your own and to have fun while you're learning at the same time. What will also be the same is that we'll make sure that you meet as many local peers as possible. So we'll put you into contact with and we'll take you to some Dutch high schools and some Dutch organizations that focus on working with high school kids so that you have a chance to talk to your Dutch peers while you're here in the Netherlands. In terms of the food situation, which some of you may be interested in, you will have breakfast every single day at the hostel where you will be staying, and you'll have lunch and dinner at various different locations and restaurants throughout the city. We want to expose you to the rich culinary scene here in the Netherlands, You will have those dinners with other students on the program. Sometimes we'll have dinner as a full group, and sometimes we'll give you the chance to strike out on your own and find a restaurant for the evening. The two programs that I've mentioned a couple of times now are the Queer Life and Activism program and the World Government program. What will you be doing in the Queer Life and Activism program? You'll be studying the ways in which the Netherlands has always played a key role in advocating for LGBTQ rights and equality initiatives. I mentioned earlier that the Netherlands is famous for being the first country in the world to legalize same-sex marriage, but that is a legal victory that did not happen overnight. That was the result of decades of activism that took place both in the Netherlands and outside of the Netherlands. And there are many organizations that today still work to advance this agenda. We've achieved a lot, but there is still so much more that we need to do when it comes to achieving full equality. We'll look, for example, at the way in which trans activism is now a crucial component of the queer rights agenda in the Netherlands. And we have a lot of work to do in that arena. We'll go on activities that will combine queer culture, history, and politics. And what you learn is that these are all connected. The history, the politics, the daily life, they all speak to each other. We'll take you to Vogue dance workshops where you learn about voguing and the crucial role that the ballroom scene, which you may have heard of, plays in queer culture. We'll go on walking tours in which you will see the queer history of the Netherlands visualized in the city of Amsterdam itself. And this is a really cool initiative. We will put you in touch with some local gay-straight alliances, or GSAs. Many of you may have gay-straight alliances at the high schools that you attend in the US. So you'll get a chance to talk about the approach we take versus the ways in which gay-straight alliances operate in the United States at your schools. What we'll be doing in the World Government program is really tracing the role of the Netherlands from that beanie lux that I mentioned earlier, that mini version of the European Union, through today. And we'll explain the role that the Netherlands plays in helping to shape world politics and vice versa. How the Netherlands as one country in one coalition of countries, the European Union, is impacted both by European politics and by global politics. So we're looking at that connection between the world, the local, the global. That's really what we're doing in this course. And we'll take you to a number of international organizations that play a role in actually carrying out and administering these policies. I mentioned the ICJ before, the EMA, the European Medicines Agency. We also have the High Commissioner's Office for Refugees, which focuses on global refugee policy, which, if you're following the news, is more topical than it's ever been. As you know now, there is a situation in Poland when there are a number of refugees that Poland is refusing to let into the country. Well, that is exactly the type of issue that the International Commissioner's Office for Refugee focuses on. We'll be splitting our time between The Hague, the political capital, and Amsterdam, the cultural capital. And if possible, we will also be taking you to Brussels. And many of you know that Brussels is the beating heart of the European Union and is home to many European political organizations. And we'll take you inside those political institutions. What does your day-to-day life look like? Well, you're taking classes, of course, and I hope I've given you a little bit of a sense of what those classes will be about, but you'll also be taking other types of classes, like dancing classes, like those Vogue ballroom classes, like Dutch cooking classes. You see the student here on the right who just helped prepare a typical Dutch meal. That is something that we will be doing as well. We'll take you to a number of different museums. We'll make sure that we give you the chance to exercise, that we play ultimate frisbee in one of those many parks, or we take you kayaking in the Amsterdam forest. Some of those activities are just pure fun, and others will tie into the topics that you will be discussing in class. What will be your home away from home? What will be your base of operations? Well, we work together with a specific hostel in the city of Amsterdam, and that hostel will be your home away from home. You see a picture here of a group of students in their room, which clearly they seem to be enjoying and seem to be having a good time. And you also see a picture here of sort of the shared facilities in the hostel. You will be sharing that room with a number of other students on the program, enrolling in your program. And the hostel is also where you will have breakfast every single morning, as well as some dinners. Only some. For other dinners, we will be taking you to restaurants in and around the city of Amsterdam. The hostel has Wi-Fi, which of course is super helpful. It has these open lounge areas, and it even has table soccer. So there's a lot to do at the hostel.
Jonathan?
Yes.
Is the photo you showed before on the slide before the outside of the hostel?
No, there's which
the background, that cool looking structure?
So this is actually another hostel. It is a hostel, but this is in the city of Rotterdam.
Okay.
Yes, this is in the city of Rotterdam. And this is a very famous building. It's known as the Concrete Forest. So the architect wanted to mimic a forest, but then in the city, and constructed this hostel. If you're enrolling in the Queer Life and Activism program, this is where we will take you on the overnight excursion. If you're doing the World Government program, we will hopefully be able to take you to Brussels. But that, of course, will be tied to the last thing that I wanted to talk about today, and that is, of course, life in the age of COVID-19. And I wanted to make sure, since I suspect that you may have some questions about this, what the situation in Amsterdam currently looks like in terms of COVID-19. I'll begin with the good news, or the great news, and that is that 82% of everyone in the Netherlands aged 12 and up is fully vaccinated. So what we see is great uptake in terms of the vaccine and low hesitancy. However, what is also happening at the same time is that even with 82% of people fully vaccinated, that still leaves close to 2 million people in the Netherlands who are not vaccinated. And unfortunately, the Delta variant is causing some of those people to need medical care, and in the worst case, to end up in the hospital. And because of that, the Dutch government has taken a number of measures to mitigate the spread of COVID-19. What you see here on the slide is what is happening today. However, if the past year and a half has taught us anything, and I'm sure that's your experience as well, wherever you are in the US, these things change, right? This is a shifting landscape, and hopefully these things will only get better and better and better. And certainly by the time that you arrive, we hope that many of these measures will no longer be in place. However, what are they now? Well, currently, bars, restaurants, any quote unquote non-essential business, which means anything other than, a grocery store, needs to close at 8 p.m. currently. We also require what's called a COVID-19 passport, and that is proof that you have either been fully vaccinated or had COVID and have recovered from COVID, in order to do a number of things. For example, if you wanted to go to a movie theater today, you would need to show a Corona passport. If you wanted to go to a museum, you would need to show your Corona passport. So that is another measure that is currently in place in the Netherlands. All museums and cultural institutions are open. In fact, almost everything is open in the Netherlands. Bars are open, restaurants are open, but they're just closing earlier than they used to before COVID. We also have mask mandates. We have mask mandates on all forms of public transportation and in some indoor locations. We don't have it, for example, in movie theaters. We don't have it in museums, but we do have it at schools, for example. So some places you have to wear a mask, some places you do not have to wear a mask. That said, we can travel freely inside of the Netherlands. We don't have any curfew. And to be honest, if I'm looking at my day-to-day life, yeah, I have to wear a mask some places. Yes, I have to pull up my phone, go to the app, show my COVID passport in order to go to see a movie. But for the most part, life in Amsterdam feels quote unquote normal, but our sense of normal, of course, has been shaped by COVID and by the past year and a half in COVID. I am really confident, however, that with the vaccine, making its way through the Netherlands, with the success of the vaccination campaign, that we will be in a very different picture by the time you get here next summer, or in a very different landscape. And of course, we will keep you posted on these COVID-19 measures so that you know exactly what will be expected of you when you arrive in the Netherlands. We'll have a pretty detailed orientation day with you when you arrive, followed by some other orientation activities later in the program. And we will make absolutely sure that you fully understand what these measures involve. So for right now, you see a great picture here again of some of our 2019 high school students, and I hope that you will be following in their footsteps next summer, in the summer of 2022. So do you have any questions for me?
Maybe you can stop sharing the screen actually, Jonathan, if you want.
Yes, absolutely.
If anyone wants to ask questions, you can go off mute. Can be logistical about the
typically participate in the programs as a group.
Say that again, sorry.
How many students typically participate in each one of the groups?
Right. So in the past, we usually have had fairly small groups, so around 10 to 15 students per group. But we can accommodate up to 20 or 25 students per group.
There's a question about phones. Do our phones work when we travel overseas? I believe we make sure that everybody has a functioning SIM card, correct?
That is correct. So we will give you a Dutch SIM card when you arrive here in the Netherlands, and we will tell you exactly how to put that SIM card into your phone, how to activate it, how to put credit on your SIM card so that you're able to make calls or text each other, or use WhatsApp or whatever other messaging service you want to use. And we will do all of that when you arrive, so that by the end of day one, you're fully set up with your phone.
There's a couple of questions around the lodging. What kind of supervision do you get at the hostel? Do they live in rooms together? And are all the students living there at the CIA program, or is it a public hostel with other public? I believe we have a dedicated section, but I'll let you talk about that.
Yeah, no, so those are a number of really great questions, and I hope I don't miss any of them. So to answer sort of the last question, yes, that is correct. So we are working with a hostel where a dedicated section of the hostel, in terms of the rooms in the hostel, will be reserved for us, for CIE students. However, the shared facilities in the hostel, so those pictures that you saw of the beautiful couches and the soccer table and all of the other facilities that are there for our students to use, are used by everyone at the hostel. We do have constant supervision in that the program leader, and we haven't really talked about the program leader yet, the program leader is someone hired by CIE from the US who will accompany you, chaperone you on your flight, and then be with you for the entire duration of the program. They'll join all of your activities, and they will be living at the hostel with you, so that you have someone there at the hostel 24/7. So if something happens, you can reach out to them because they're staying at the hostel as well. And they will work hand in hand with someone from our team, from the Amsterdam team, who will be the coordinator of the program. So you as a student will always have two people to reach out to. You'll have your Amsterdam coordinator, and you'll have your program leader who has been with you from day one.
There's a good follow-up question. If you travel with a buddy, can you request to be placed in the same room?
Yes.
I believe we can accommodate that.
Yes, yeah. Absolutely, we can accommodate that. And I think that goes to the one question that I haven't answered yet. So yes, you will be sharing the room with other students. We have different room types. It's usually either 4 students to a room or 6 students to a room. And dependent on sort of the size of the group, we will divide the students over those rooms. And if you request to be, sharing a bunk bed with someone from your high school or someone that you know, then there's certainly something that we can do.
How much free time do you have every day?
So it really depends on the day. We always make sure that you have some free time during the day, a day where we have an activity that may take us to a different city in the Netherlands or somewhere outside of Amsterdam. You may have a little bit less free time because we're traveling there, because we have that activity planned. But there will be days where you will have much more free time. So it's really sort of a balance. There's no sort of set number of hours per day where you will have free time, but you will always have some free time.
And I will complete that by saying that during the orientation on site on the first day on program, we usually train the students a lot on how to handle the free time, guidelines around like staying in groups, for the free time. We encourage students not to be completely alone. It's always better to be in a group. And we give them pointers on, the neighborhoods and, cultural cues to look for so that they can stay safe during their free time. But it's a big, part and excitement of those programs to be able to gain some independence like that. So we do want to encourage it. We just give students the framework to stay safe.
Yeah, exactly. And if we do have more free time, let's say that you have 3 or 4 hours of free time, then there may even be a check-in where you will meet with your program leader at the halfway point just to make sure that everyone's doing okay. And then you're off again and you can continue to explore on your own.
Do you need any prior knowledge on the topics before coming?
No, you really don't. So the only thing you need is an interest in it. If you have an interest in queer life and in queer politics or in world government and how exactly does world government work, how do these institutions work, what role do they play, that's all you need. You just need to have an interest in these topics. No background knowledge is required.
Can you talk about the stipends to purchase meals? I believe the cost of all meals are included in the program tuition. Can you talk about how the tuition, how the stipend works?
Yes. So there will be some days where we will be taking you as a full group to a restaurant. And in that case, there is no stipend. However, we know from experience that you would like to choose what you eat sometime. And we take you to restaurants. We make decisions that we think are good decisions, right? We take you to restaurants that we like as staff, that we've taken students to before. So what we will usually do is in the beginning of the program, we will take you to restaurants ourselves because you won't know the city yet, because you won't know how to navigate, you won't know where those restaurants that you want to go to are. After you've spent a week or a week and a half here, but I would say after a week, that's when we begin to switch to the stipend system. And the way it works is we give you an envelope with some euros in it. And we'll give you multiple envelopes throughout the program. We give you that envelope and then you decide where you want to spend it, which students you want to go to which restaurant with. And it really gives you a chance based on, your own palate, the foods that you like, you can have those foods while you're here in Amsterdam.
And you save the change and get candy with it, or?
I mean, that money is yours. Yeah. So if you do have a little bit of money left over, you can either carry that over to, the next dinner. Mm-hmm. You can buy some candy with it. Absolutely.
How much is it? Someone's asking. Susan is asking.
Really depends. If we do an envelope that covers, for example, like 3 days, and there will be more in there. But I would say that for one meal, it's usually, I would say, between sort of 20 and 25 euros.
Right. There was a question about banks. Will I be able to use American bank accounts while in Amsterdam, or do I have to make a Dutch bank account?
So because you really won't be in Amsterdam all that long, it's really not worth getting a Dutch bank account, because that you have to go to a bank and then it can take up to 4 to 6 to 7 sometimes working days for you to actually get that Dutch bank account, which is why we recommend that you simply use ATMs instead. So you'll go to an ATM, there are ATMs everywhere, and you simply withdraw euros from that ATM and then you pay in cash. What I do know, however, is that more and more of you in working with students have bank accounts issued by your bank, the bank account you're using now, that actually allows you to pay with that bank card in the Netherlands without having to withdraw cash. But that depends on your bank and whether that's something that your bank and your type of card allows you to do. But most of our students simply use the ATM and will withdraw cash.
Are group trips every day, most day, less often?
They're certainly not every day. If by group trips you mean trips outside of or to a different city, we have group activities every single day. So there will be activities as a group every single day. Sometimes they will be related to the class. Sometimes they will be purely fun, recreational activities. So I would say almost every single day, you will have some type of trip, some type of excursion, some type of activity that will be with other students in the group. It's also important to mention that for some of those activities, we may be combining the groups, right? We certainly want you to be able to meet the students who are on the World Government Program if you're a Queer Life and Activism student and vice versa. Whereas some of the activities that focus on topics that you've talked about in the class, those you will probably do just with your group.
Can you talk about the weekends?
Yeah, so the weekends you will have no class, so no classes on the weekend, but we are organizing activities for you on the weekend. We certainly want to make sure on the weekend that you get a lot of free time to explore, because that's crucial that you have that time to do it, and the weekend is the perfect time to do that. But the weekend is also the perfect time to go on fun recreational activities, which is why we'll be organizing a lot of those on the weekend as well, whether it's taking you to one of the famous open air markets in Amsterdam, taking you kayaking in the park, going on one of those biking excursions, the ultimate frisbee, all of that will probably happen a lot in the weekend.
How much do you have curfew, like a specific bedtime enforced? How much time do you have in the morning to get ready?
Yeah, so how much time do you have in the morning to get ready? There is a breakfast that happens every single morning at the hostel, and then there is the start date or time rather of the class. So the breakfast is a buffet, so you can choose when you go down and when you decide to have that breakfast, although usually students will do that together. So they'll go together and they'll have breakfast. Usually the classes will start around 9:30, 10 a.m., 10:15. It'll probably be around that time for the morning classes. So there's certainly no set wake-up time. We will not be waking you up at any specific point in time. It's sort of up to you to schedule your time, but we will tell you when the breakfast is in the mornings, when you can go down to have breakfast. And then we will all meet up as a group to travel from the hostel to what we call study center. That is our office, and that is where your class will meet. So if you're in the World Government Program, if you're in the Queer Life Program, you will always have class at the study center, and you will always travel there as a group with your program leader in the morning. So you will always travel in the morning with the group. What you do before that time that you need to be ready to leave is really up to you. If you want to have a really, really quick breakfast, if you want to have a longer breakfast, you can schedule your time. And also probably good to mention that the hostel is very close to the study center. So when we're walking, and if the weather is nice, we will be walking most of the time. It's about 15 minutes, 1-5, a 15-minute walk from the hostel to the study center. What method of transportation do we use to travel? Oh, I think I probably just answered.
You just answered that, yeah.
Chantal's question. Sometimes we may, if it's really raining, for example, which sometimes happens in the summer, if it's raining cats and dogs, we may use the tram. There is a tram stop that is not even 5 minutes from the hostel, and then we will take the tram to the study center instead. But since it is so close and perfect walking distance, we will be walking most summer days. Krista is asking, do the students need to bring a computer with them, like in the language and culture programs? It is not required for this program that you bring a computer with you. It can certainly be helpful to do that. However, if you're not in a position to bring a laptop with you, it's absolutely no problem. Any of the homework that you need to do, some of the articles that the teacher may ask you to read for the next class, we will print those out so that you have those and that you're able to do that. So it's certainly not a requirement, but it can be helpful to have a computer with you.
And can you talk about how students in the World Government Program meet Dutch students? We missed that question from Annika.
Yes. So for both programs, regardless of the program that you're in, we're working with Dutch high schools and looking at ways in which sort of the summer programming that happens at Dutch high schools, we are able to join so that you as the student are able to meet other Dutch students. The specific example that I gave for the Queer Life and Activism program was about those gay-straight alliances, which is something that many Dutch high schools have. So we will be doing that for that program because it's a specific way in which we can talk about something that we will also talk about in the course. But for the World Government Program, it'll be a more general way in which we facilitate you coming together with other Dutch high school students. And sometimes it can just be as simple as, doing a soccer match with those students in order to get to know them a little bit better.
Class is typically 3 hours, right?
Yes, that is correct. Yeah. Again, it will sort of depend on the day as well. It may be a little bit shorter, a day where we have a class excursion to a cultural institution. So that is something that will shape that schedule a little bit.
There's a couple of things we didn't address in the presentation that I wanted to mention, just more general things for flight booking. So that's information that we will share in February with you. And you'll have the option to either fly on your own or fly as part of a group on a group flight, chaperoned by a program leader. So that's good to know that you have that option if that's something that interests you. Usually we have a few hubs in the US where students will meet to take the international leg of the flight. So if you don't live in a big city, you could take a domestic flight on your own to the US departure city and then meet your group at the airport to fly to Amsterdam. And on general, we have about 1 adult for 10 students ratio on program to give you a sense of how we are staffed for those programs.
Yep, absolutely.
I posted in the chat a link to an example of 1 week on program, so you have a sense of how much you'll get to do in a week and how things are kind of like paced through the day. Hopefully that's helpful. There's a good question on homework. Do they get homework on this program? I know they do on language programs, but
yeah, there may be some classes where you have to do a little bit of homework, as in read an article, paper article in preparation for the next class. But there won't be a great deal of homework that you need to do. But there may be a little bit of prep that we ask you to do to prepare for each class. But it'll mostly be reading up on, for example, newspaper articles. Maybe the teacher wants you to watch a video that explains a specific process that happens in a governmental institution. So that's something that we may be asking you to do. In terms of, I see another question here about the schedule. So you'll receive sort of the full class schedule when you arrive so that you know exactly what is happening which day. I can tell you that to keep things as sort of fair as possible, since we have 2 programs, and we have 1 classroom at the study center, what we'll be doing is we'll be dividing the program in half. So the queer program will begin with classes in the morning, and then halfway through the program, at the exact halfway point, you will switch to afternoon classes. And then the World Government Program will begin with afternoon classes and will switch to morning classes. I just made that up, by the way. It could be vice versa, but we'll switch halfway through the program so that at the end of the day, you will all have had the same number of morning classes and afternoon classes.
Can you talk about who teaches the classes and whether or not they are tests and graded assignments?
Yes, that's a great question. So in terms of our teachers, we work with 2 teachers. Our Queer Life and Activism teacher is one of our CIE teachers who has been teaching classes on social policy, for years now for us. And she also taught the Queer Life and Activism program in 2019 when we last ran the program. The teacher who will be teaching our World Government program, she teaches one of our classes for our university students who go on one of our university programs on political and economic development in the Netherlands. And she used to work for the UN. So she is someone who worked for the United Nations, who knows world government really well. She now works in Dutch politics instead. So she sort of has that insider's view of how these institutions work. In terms of the assignments that you will do, it will be any number of things. There'll be in-class discussions. There will be debates that you will have both in the Queer Life and Activism program and in the World Government program. Debating is crucial, right? Debating is crucial to how sort of political points are made. So I'll work with that debate model a lot. And there will be a final project that you will do for each of those classes that is sort of designed by the teacher together with us. So there will be a number of different sort of activities that you will do throughout the course.
You won't be graded though. It's not like school where you're going to come home with a specific grade.
No, but you will of course get feedback, right? Because the point is for you to learn something from.
It's really for you to grow, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
I will just say that in addition to the teachers, I think you also invite guest speakers, right? So to kind of like keep those sessions interactive, you'll have, consultants or people from, can you give a few examples of people who've come in the past?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So you're absolutely right. We want to make sure that you hear from the people who are doing this work right now. And our teachers have a lot of background in this subject, but they may not be as familiar hands-on with all of these different topics that we talk about. So if we look at the World Government program, we'll invite leaders from the Dutch political parties to come to talk about the ways in which Dutch politics is shaped by global politics. What does it mean for a Dutch politician who's involved, for example, in economic policy? How is that economic policy shaped by the decisions that are made by the European Central Bank? To give just one example. So that would be a Dutch politician who would come in and who would talk about that. We'll bring in someone, a colleague from our teacher, also, a former colleague of hers from when she worked at the UN. We'll talk exactly about the United Nations and how the United Nations work, what exactly her job is at the United Nations and what that means for her on a day-to-day basis. In terms of the Queer Life program, we'll be visiting, for example, the COC, and the COC is the oldest queer rights organization in the world. And it still today is the leading queer advocacy group in the Netherlands. And we'll also take you to a trans activist group in the Netherlands that works specifically on trans policy and on making sure that what is really seen as the next dimension of queer politics, what their successes have been, what their obstacles continue to be, and how sort of trans issues are currently resonating in the Dutch political landscape. So it's a combination of taking you to organizations. We call those site visits. So this is where we're visiting an actual organization. And like Pierre said, having those speakers come to us instead, come into the classroom. And really the goal is to make you all understand how these things that we talk about actually work. It's fine to talk about it. How does it actually work? And that's why the speakers come in or we go to organizations.
There is a follow-up question, which is, where do I do my laundry?
Yeah, great question. So we have washing machines at the hostel. So the hostel has a laundry room and they have washers and dryers. So you can do your laundry right there at the hostel. You just walk down, it's on the ground floor and there's a laundry room right there.
Do you know, Jonathan, what's the excursion or the cultural activity that students have loved the most in the past?
Ooh,
what was the biggest hit with students?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say that the two biggest hits that I can remember is when we took all of the students to a community kitchen where they help prepare food for children who come from families that are not able socioeconomically to provide 3 meals a day for the family. And our students cooked those meals with the volunteers at the community center and then ate that food with the children who go to those community centers for their dinners. That was an activity that, that was really great for us and for the students. The other one that students really, really loved was the voguing session. So where they learned about voguing, which is a specific form of queer cultural expression, which is a specific type of dancing. It's a specific type of performance. And we work with sort of a voguing coach who is very active in the Dutch, what's called ballroom scene. And yeah, you then practice voguing. So the songs go on and then students vogue.
Awesome.
That was also a really cool activity. I will say the biking excursions are always a big hit because it's just so fun. The weather is nice in the summer to just be outside and to just be biking through the city of Amsterdam or to be biking through the Amsterdam forest where we will definitely take you. So those are all really big hits.
There's a couple of questions on bathrooms. Do they have shared bathrooms? How does that work?
That's a great question. So you have ensuite bathrooms. So if there are, if you're sharing a room with 3 other students, then you will all be using that bathroom that is in your room. So there is a bathroom per room. So it's individual, but individual in the sense that you're then sharing it with the other people who are in your room, but only with the people in your room. So it's not like there's a bathroom down the hall. You have a bathroom in your room.
And it's all CIE students.
Yes, absolutely. Of course, you will only be sharing that with CIE students. We will never place you in a room with anyone who is not on the CIE program. Daniela, what do we do if we get lost in the city? Is there any way that we can contact our group leaders? Yes, absolutely. So we will make sure that on day 1, we will actually be giving you a little laminated card, and that card will have all of the necessary sort of contact information on it. And the most important one is what we call the CIE emergency phone. So this is a number that you can call 24/7, day or night, if you're lost or if anything else is happening, right, that you would like our help with. You simply pick up the phone, you dial that number, and you will have either the program coordinator or your program leader who will pick up that phone. It'll usually be the program coordinator, so the staff person here in Amsterdam. Of course, if there's any issue that you have, you can always go to your program leader as well. They're right there with you at the hostel. But in your case, Daniela, in your scenario, and we hope that won't happen, but should you get turned around, you're on the canal belt, all of those canals look the same, especially in the beginning, then you will just pick up the phone and we'll come find you.
And as we mentioned earlier, every student on program will be given a SIM card that works locally.
Correct.
So I think you need to plan on coming with an unlocked phone so that you can change the SIM card. But we require that every student has a cell phone. And for those students who don't have a cell phone, we can usually provide phones, I believe.
Yes.
To make sure that we can get in touch with you, exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a couple of pretty old school sort of cell phones. They're not very smart in the sense that there's not a great deal you can do with them, but you can text, you can call, all of those things you can do. So if you're not in a position where you can bring an unlocked phone with you, we will have phones that we can loan you for the entirety of the program. There's a question here about transferring credits. Maybe that's one that you could speak to, Pierre.
Yeah, I'm not aware of transferring credits for your high school grade. What we do offer on our language program is the students do get graded and do have the option to get college credit through our partnership with Tulane University. But that's okay, it's for college. So that only applies to the language and culture program. So both of the programs that Jonathan talked about are thematic programs. So they do not provide you college credit. if we get accepted into the program, will we have meetings where we interact with each other? Yes. In fact, in a couple of different ways. We typically have a fairly significant pre-departure cycle where you will get to have a pre-departure orientation online in a similar format as this one. But we will also have you follow an online course that will get you ready for travel. And as part of that online course, you'll have the opportunity to share your contact information with the other students attending your session, so that you can exchange and get to know each other. In fact, we really encourage it because it's really nice to know who you're going to be traveling with and kind of break the ice before the trip, so that when you meet at the airport, it kind of feels like you're meeting a friend, someone you already know.
Yeah, exactly.
Can you guys show me a show of hands for like, have you already started applications for those programs, or you're just starting? If you don't want to turn on your camera, you can just use the little reaction button. Yeah, great. I wanted to mention that on Thursday at 8 p.m., our team is going to host like an application workshop. So if you need help with any application task that you're stuck on, or if you need to talk to our team about your application, Thursday evening at 8 p.m. is a great moment to do that. You can register to that session on the same page where you registered for this. I'm gonna put it here. And I also wanted to say that if you have an application open and are confident you want to complete your application, I encourage you to finish over Thanksgiving break, because if you finish your application by December 1st, you'll be entered into a raffle to win a free flight. So it's if you know you're going to go and that you have your application ready, why not give it a try? Can't be in the raffle if you don't meet that deadline.
Yeah, exactly. As our students are always saying, shoot your shot, which is a new
Exactly.
I learned. You have to shoot your shot. I see a quick question here. Are there levels of classes? No. So there's only one level. There's only one version of each class that we teach.
We do levels for language programs usually, so that the students are grouped by level of proficiency and can stay challenged. Topic programs like this, I think the teachers are great about working with like smaller groups like that and adapting the content to what the students also respond to. So I feel like you'll feel absolutely challenged and engaged, even if you have some prior knowledge of those topics.
Yeah, absolutely.
You guys are awesome. You have lots of questions.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
Jonathan, can I share some experiences from last summer's program my daughter attended?
Absolutely.
Sure. Awesome.
She went to Barcelona with your language and culture program last summer, the summer after her freshman year, and had an amazing time. And if there's any parents listening, the CIEE staff are wonderful. They handle everything so professionally. I had no fears of sending a 15-year-old to Barcelona for a month by herself. And there were some bumps in the road. There was a quarantine at the beginning of her trip and a quarantine at the end of her trip and a flight that went awry on the way home, and they handled everything wonderfully. And she is ready to sign up for Amsterdam this summer.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Wow, that is
really awesome.
great.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And the language program is a bit different. She was in a homestay with a family, and she did get lost in Barcelona, and her friends helped find her. And we hardly ever heard from her because I kept calling her during her free time block while she was at the beach. So I told her I will drop her off in Amsterdam and see her in 3 weeks when she's done. And she really did learn how to navigate life through that program. So thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. It's one of the benefit of the program is really that, honestly, like regardless of the topic, I think the experience of going abroad on your own at such a young age, I mean, I commend the students for doing that. It's I understand it's intimidating, but they all, grow in so many ways over just like 3-4 weeks in the summer. It's great.
Yeah, And like you said, we have that support system, and that support system is our staff. And I'm not surprised to hear that your daughter had such great experiences in Barcelona, because we all love the Barcelona team and our colleagues in Barcelona. But it's both the CIE staff and then the program leaders. So you really have two built-in persons who are there all the time to answer any questions, to help out if anything, like you said, goes awry, which it sometimes does. Knock on wood, there will be no quarantine. We won't worry about any of that by the time that your daughter arrives. Plus, no beaches in Amsterdam. So hopefully this time she will pick up the phone during her free time, because no beaches in Amsterdam. Great.
To mention, Krista, that as the parent of an alumni, you can refer friends and family to the CIE programs, and it grants students a $200 discount, which can be accumulated with a scholarship. So feel free to do that if you can. You just have to log into your account.
She's referred 3 or 4 people. I thought it'd be pretty cheesy to put my referral code in the chat, so I won't do that.
Feel free if you want to.
Oh gosh, no, it's all good.
All right. There's a question we missed about what do we have to do before leaving once we are already accepted. So that's a very structured process. We'll communicate with you. It's the pre-departure process I refer to. Like there's an online course to follow, and I think Chantal wants your code, Krista, so you guys can exchange emails. It only works for new applications, though, so you have to start your application with that link. That's the catch. So for the pre-departure process, it's again an online course. It's a mix of online course plus a pre-departure orientation in a format like that. So you'll have a bunch of pre-departure tasks to do in your application, like uploading your passport photo, uploading your flight itinerary, etc. So these tasks will unlock once you're accepted, but it's a really clear step-by-step process. So there you go. So if anyone use this code, you'll get a $200 discount to start your application.
And there's also a question here, Kim, Pierre from Kim, about sort of what the travel day will look like in terms of how students will travel from their US airports to Amsterdam.
Yeah, so like I mentioned before, it depends on whether or not you book the group flight or if you fly independently. If you book the group flight, we usually will release that information in February based on where the students live. But usually we try to offer a few options for group flights that live from big cities in the US like New York, San Francisco, Chicago. And we will have a chaperone meeting the students at the gate. So you'll have to drop off your student at the airport. Either they take a domestic flight to the hub airport and meet their group at the gate, or you drop them off at the hub airport and we will meet them at the gate before departure. And then we take the students all the way to Amsterdam, and the local staff in Amsterdam welcomes the groups in at the airport and like handles the transfer. If you fly independently, you will be asked to arrive within a certain time window so that we can make sure that there is someone waiting for you at the airport. So you're never left alone. You're never left alone, like figuring out like where to go after the airport. Like we will pick you up at the airport. And the hubs, we will know that closer to February, because we usually pick the hubs based on where students live. In the past, it's been commonly San Francisco, New York, Chicago, sometimes. I think that's all I can think of right now. But can we do a one-way meeting our kids at the end of the program? Yes, you can. Yes, you can absolutely do that. You can't come during the program. We want students to stay focused on their group experience and don't want to mix in the family. But you can certainly have a family vacation after.
So in terms of the follow-up question that Kim is asking, based on our experience, it's really a mix. So we do find that some students will travel with other students from their high school. So we usually have some sort of contingents of students who come from the same high school. But that's always combined with students who are the single student from their high school who are traveling to Amsterdam. So some of the students already know each other, some of the students do not.
And it's a great way to like get to meet different people from different states also, because I think we have the largest scholarship program in the US for high school students. So our program are really accessible to all, which is a big feature of those programs and a big benefit of the program too for anyone really attending. The students say that every year, that the type of students that they meet on those programs is super diverse and super exciting, because it's very different sometimes from where they live, because they'll meet students from all over the US from all kinds of different backgrounds. But all the students, because our scholarships are based on academic merit and financial need, we do get very motivated students, academically driven. So it's usually, the courts are usually pretty awesome. I'm myself amazed every time I visit a program. Like, I feel yeah, the students are just super articulate, engaged, and usually an impressive group of students. I certainly wasn't that smart at age 16. So it's always an humbling experience for me to meet those students on program. If you guys no longer have questions, I will let Jonathan go, because it's after 10 p.m. your time. Really appreciate you calling all the way from Amsterdam, Jonathan.
Of course, I'm happy to do it. And I really look forward to seeing some of you in Amsterdam.
Yeah, thanks.